Alright, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to be upgrading the High-Flying Valor starter deck on a budget. We will not be spending a single rare. So if you want to upgrade these, go to your starter decks. You want to highlight the deck, which is here. I don't know why I couldn't find it. And you want to clone it. You can't edit these, can't change them. But if you clone the deck, it's going to create a second copy in your decks here. And this you're free to upgrade or update or change or ruin at your own behest. Is that the word I'm looking for? So, what is this? This is a Azorius, that's right, grammar out the window, and Azorius Soldier deck. So it has a lot of the key pieces like Harbin, it has Sky Strike Officer, stuff that's just kind of so-so. So the good news is this is a tier 1 deck. If you want to upgrade this to the absolute best, just look up tier 1 Azorius Soldiers. It's a tier 1 deck, but we'll be doing it on a budget. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click here, and we're going to flip this over to standard, because alchemy's expensive, and you're just not going to win very often with a budget starter deck and alchemy. The decks are too powerful. So let's start by cutting these alchemy cards, and we can take out Elspeth's Command for a very powerful card. That's also very cheap because it's an uncommon. This is Coast Vanguard. It's a 2-mana 2/2. Each other human gets +1/+0 and ward. Now, technically, we're a soldier deck, but almost all soldiers are humans, with the exception of, like, this cute little dog here. But besides that, it basically pumps everything in our deck, and it's a 2-mana 2/2, and giving them ward is also very relevant. So we're going to add one of these, we're going to take out one of these, and that's going to work just fine. And then we're going to take out these two cards, which, again, alchemy, don't care, we're yeeting out the alchemy, and just adding 2 more of those. So this makes it standard legal, also gets us like one of the best tribal cards for our deck. So that's all pretty great. Next, this ambush paratrooper, it's trying to pump our board. It gives all the creatures +1/+1 if we pay 5, or we can just play this and pump them for free. So we can cut out one of those for our 4th copy of Coast Vanguard. Next we have mass production. So this is just trying to flood the board with soldier tokens. The problem is, well, it costs 6. 6 is a lot. We're a pretty low curve aggro deck typically. This deck is a little chunky. It's a little on the chunky side, but it's 6 mana. So we can just replace this with resolute reinforcements. This is played in basically every soldier and human deck. It's a 2-mana 1/1, enters, makes a 1/1 token. So the great thing about this is it's basically a 2-mana 2/2 sort of, right? But it has flash, so we can play it end of turn as like a sort of surprise. And it like basically doubles the power of like lords, because this would give, like if this was a 2/2, this would give it +1/+1 and make it a 3/3, right? But since it divides itself into 2 creatures, and now it gives each of them +1/+1, so it's like 4 power. So it like basically amplifies the effects of like Coast Vanguard, of Valiant Veteran, of this card, of this one, right? All of these get more powerful because this splits into 2. It also gives us more creatures to tap with this, and it gives us more chance to have 5 creatures with this. So it's like unassuming, but it actually like is really effective with all of our tribal payoffs. So we'll cut one of these and we'll add one of these. So next, I'm not a huge fan of this card. It's a 1-mana 1/1 with first strike, and then after it dies, we can scry 2, but it's not as good as Recruitment Officer, which is a 2/1 for 1, so it's very aggressive, and in the late game, we can pay 4, and look at the top 4, reveal a creature with mana value 3 or less. Typically, that's most of the deck. Again, this deck is a little chunky, it's a little on the chunky side, but it's still pretty good. 4 mana, get a creature, very nice in the late game when we're flooded, so I definitely think it's worth taking out 2 of these for 2 more of these. Next, we're a little bit heavy on removal. This deck is typically a, play our stuff, play creatures, kill the opponent as quickly as possible, and we have a lot of removal for a deck like this. We have 2 Elspeth Smite, we have 2 Lay Down Arms, we have 3 Prison Sentence. That's 7 removal spells. Typically in an aggro deck, especially when so focused on deploying creatures, maybe you play like 3 or 4. 7 is quite a bit. So I think we take out 2 of these, which is not that great. We'll take out these 2. It does 3 damage to something, but it has to be attacking or blocking. And we're going to replace it with another very common card in this deck, which is Yoshin Frontliner. It's a 1-mana 1/1 soldier. When it attacks, another creature gets +1/+1. So this adds up very fast. It's going to put out a ton of power. It basically puts out 2 power. So when you combine this with, also a 2-mana 2/1, And then we have like a 3-power flyer for 2. We have a 2-mana lord. It just helps getting out tons of power super quick. Also unearths, which can give us a 5th creature for something like this, which is nice. And we're going to take out the last survivor of Corliss for our 3rd Yoshin frontliner, just to make that a little bit more consistent. Next, I'd like to get a 4th Resolute Reinforcement in the deck, and I think the weakest 2-drop right now is Ambush Paratroopers. It's not really played basically ever, and Resolute Reinforcements is, well, it's just basically always played. So, pretty simple. Let's take out one of those for one of these, and I feel much better about it. And I still think this final Ambush Paratrooper is pretty bad, so I'm going to take that out as well for a 3rd copy of Zephyr Sentinel. So this is a 2-mana 2/1 flash flying. So as like an ambush attacker, much better. We play end of turn. Opponent's not expecting an extra 2 power in the air. It can also protect one of our creatures. When it enters, it returns one other creature to our hand. If it's a soldier, this will get a +1/+1 counter. So if our opponent hits one of our, like say they hit our Lord with a removal spell, in response, we play this, bounce it to our hand, get a counter, and then we can redeploy this. We can also like play this, bounce this, then replay it for another token, so that's pretty good. Next, this Aeronaut Cavalry is pretty clunky. It's a 5-mana 3/4. When it enters, it puts 1 counter on another target soldier. It can't even put it on itself. It's fine, but it's not as good as just Yoshin Tactician, which is a 4-mana 3/4, gives all of our soldiers +1/+1. This isn't really good enough to be played in tier 1 decks, but for 2 uncommons, I still think it's better than playing this. So I'll take 2 of these out for 2 more of these. Next, we have Clunky Removal. 3 mana for a pacifism, basically. It does scry, to be fair, but 3 mana is a lot for a removal spell, particularly in a deck that's pretty aggressive and trying to play stuff quickly. So, I want to take those out for one of the more popular removal spells in Standard, which is Ossification. It does basically the same thing. It exiles a creature or planeswalker until it gets destroyed. Same thing as this, really. But it's 2 mana. That's all that matters. It's 2 mana. So I'll put 3 of those in, take 3 of these out. So another problem I have with this deck is Lay Down Arms. So this is a very, very good removal spell in control decks. The reason it's so good in control decks is control decks don't give a crap about your life total. A control deck is going to try to get to the late game, and then it doesn't matter if you have 15 or 25 life. Once it gets its big, finisher in play, it's going to win the game no matter what. You could be at 10 life, you could be at 30, the game's over at that point. So, it doesn't care if you gain life, it'll give you 3 life, take it. So long as it can survive to the late game, that's all that matters. But in our deck, we're trying to pressure our opponent's life total. So giving them 3 life is not what I want to be doing in an aggro deck. So we're going to replace this with another removal spell that's, it's fun. It's a fun removal spell. It's Protect the Negotiators, which is right here. So it's a 2 mana counter spell unless the controller pays 1 for each creature we control, which is typically a lot because we're an aggro deck. But it also has kicker, and when we kick it, we make a 1/1. So not only can we counter something, but we can put another creature on the battlefield, which is perfect for us. So I think we could take out 2 Lay Down Arms for 2 Protect the Negotiators. I think that's absolutely fine. We're basically done, but we do have some mana we can add. So Idyllic Beachfront, it enters tapped, adds blue and white. This enters tapped, adds blue and white, and can be sacrificed for a card in the late game. So yeah, that's just better. Let's just add those, because I'd love to draw a card. It's basically like this, right? Once we're in the late game, we don't want to be in the late game, but if we get there, then we can draw extra cards. We also have, for this deck, Secluded Courtyard, which taps for colorless, but when it enters, we choose a creature type. We're going to choose Soldier, of course, and then we can add any color. So it adds blue or white, and it enters untapped. It's a fantastic dual land for us. It technically can't tap for white or blue for Ossification or Protect the Negotiators, so that's relevant, to be fair, but still, a dual land that enters untapped that we get for uncommon is pretty great. So we'll take out 2 of these, and we'll add 4 of these, 2 each, by the way, and that's basically it. That's the deck, and that should be so much more powerful. This is getting very close to like an actual soldier deck, but still have some suboptimal stuff like a Scrapyard Cohort. These are fine, but they're not typically played in the tier 1 deck. Rescue Retriever also not typically played. It is kind of cool that it has flash, so maybe it should be played more, I don't know. But what this deck needs, what it's missing, is what it already has, just more of them. It needs Valiant Veteran, Harbin, and Sky Strike Officer, and Siege Veteran. All of these rares are the cards that this deck typically plays. Oh, and maybe like 2 of these, 2 or 3 of these. So all of these are like what you want. You want more of these if possible. And the things you want to be taking out if you want to get to those is Yoshin Tactician, which is just worse than like Myral. You want to take this out. These are not great. And a lot of our low end is fine. I would say maybe Zephyr Sentinel, depending on how much you like these sort of reactionary things. If you don't like this reactionary stuff, just replacing it with like Harbin and Valiant Veteran is fine. But yeah, I would want more of these rares and less of this package here. But the irony is we have like most of the stuff that we want in this deck. They just only gave us 1 copy of each, because they're rare, of course. So yeah, that's really it. You could also improve the mana base with more rare lands, of course, more fortified beaches. But overall, I'd say this deck is pretty decent. It's a pretty good budget deck. Would love more Sky Strike Officers in particular, and Harbin. These are my 2 favorite cards in the deck. Harbin just wins the game. Sky Strike Officer is fantastic when the board gets locked up to draw cards. But overall, I think this deck should be a million times better than the stock deck. And if you try it, definitely let me know how it pans out for you. But a deck list in the description if you just want to copy paste it into your decks. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.